So remember that there was a lot of European indentured servants coming over here. So we read this book in my video of Abraham Lincoln, where it told us that his mom possibly is Melungeon, and there's a lot of history behind that. Now it says here, Melungeons, the last lost tribe in America. All right, who's the Melungeons? Who's the Melungeons? Elizabeth Caldwell Hirschman, a Northern Kennedy Service editor. And I'm on page 61 of this book, and it says here, now we must supplement the historical record with some additional and significant information. Major Abram Wood was part of a large Sephardic family, which had arrived early in the colonies and by the early 1600s was placed in South Carolina, and by the latter 1600s had also found its way to Maryland. South Carolina was actually a major place where Huguenots, French Huguenots, arrived. All right, remember French Huguenots had some kind of relation with all these Sephardic Jews and Moorish Moriscos, and then up in France. Further, we must also know that Governor Spottswood himself was born in Morocco and was likely familiar with Sephardic and Moorish emigres from the Mediterranean to the New World. Spottswood's probable intent in traveling to the Blue Ridge Mountains was not merely to claim this territory for England, which had already been done, but rather to search for silver mines reputed to have been abandoned by the early Spanish colonists from Santa Elena. Thickening the matter further is the fact that Germania, colony at which he stopped and took on men and supplies, does not appear to have been settled by ethnic Germans, but rather Sephardic Jews from Holland and Bohemia, who were specifically recruited by Spottswood for their mining and metallurgical expertise. Sephardic Jews from Germania, a colony of Germans, not from Germans, but Sephardic Jews. We should also bear in mind that the Spanish were still actively present in Florida, Louisiana, and other parts of the Southeast during this time period, and further that they and the English were hardly alone on the continent. Further down in the book, it says in 1754, 1755, and 1756, the French and Indians, who's these French, attacked colonial settlements in southwestern Virginia near New River, Reed Creek, and Holston River. A list of those killed, wounded, or taken prisoner has been preserved and is given below. Alright, so they have a list of the names of these people. Alright, pay attention to what they're going to say. It is instructive in that we see on it not only Scotch, Irish, and English names, but also those whose name would seem to indicate Jewish or what? Moorish, Melungeon ancestry. Moorish, what? Melungeon, Moorish, Melungeon ancestry, Jewish. Alright, so this is the list. It starts right here. Adam Benjamin, John Coughlin. They're saying these are Jewish Moors, or some of these Welshire. So look, Dutch Jacob, that's Frederick Stern, Benjamin Davis, Isaac Freeland, Lieutenant Wright, Colonel James Patton, Barrier, Draper, Cole, Leonard Griffin, Looney, Lee, Mott, Smith, Mann, Harmon, Moses, John Smith, Looney, Bratton, Smith, Pepper, Medley, Lyon, Goodman, Harrison, Berg, Baker, Stallnaker, Hidden, Stallnaker, Cooney, Hawk, McFarlane, Benchman. Alright, that was a long list. So it says also settled in the area at the time were Peter Matthias, Adam David, Jacob and Henry Harmon, William and Richard Hall, Haley Tobias, Philip and Joseph Clapp, Benjamin Angel, David Curry, Richard Hines, James Lyons, Richard Paris, Nathaniel Gist, son of Christopher Gist, Joseph Martin, Alicia Walden, William Carr, William Cadbury, James Aldrich, Henry Skaggs, John Henry, Anthony Bledsoe, and John and Valentine Xavier, all I propose of Sephardic Moorish descent, all Sephardic Moorish descent. By the 1770s, they had been joined by Robert and James Davis, Alexander Willie, Hugh Gallion, John Berry, Andrew Charles, John Lewis, Lieutenant Goldman, and by June 1770, nearly Moore's Fort had the following troops. list of the troops at Fort Moore, right? So there's a list of all these names. It says down here on 22 July 1776, Virginia organized a battalion of soldiers from the southwestern portion of the state to battle the Cherokee Indians. Among these soldiers, as listed below, are several I propose to be of Sephardic, right? Sephardic, look how they wrote it, Sephardic Moorish descent. Who? Soldiers fighting who? Cherokee Indians, right? Your ancestors. Who was fighting them? Well, people who are Sephardic or Moorish descent. And look at the names. Oh, we got one of them, John Adair. All right, so these are some names of what he's saying are Sephardic or Moorish. And what I want to show you is on the footnote of this, it says right here, the reader is requested to compare the names on the following two lists with the list of Sephardic surnames available at, and this is the website. Make sure you go to this website. It's www.sephardim.com if you want to check the last names, so you can see what she's saying. And there's more last names here. She's saying a lot of these are Sephardic or Moorish last names. So that's what I was saying earlier. Who really, was coming to America? We got to really think about all these indentured servants. Are they all, just because they're European, are they all pale skin? Are they all just what we think of white, pale, Caucasian? No. A lot of these Europeans were Muslims, a lot of these Europeans were Jewish, Sephardic Jews, and all kinds of different people. And the list, this is a long list. It says, from comparing these settler lists with lists of documented Sephardic surnames, it is apparent that several persons of Sephardic Moorish ancestry are present at this time. Contemporaneous with these settlers was Daniel Boone. Oh, the famous Daniel Boone. They said he was colored, right? Boone, America's archetypic pioneer. Boone had learned of Kentucky and the Cumberland Gap, leading it to during the French and Indian War. Just want to go to the footnote. It says 14. Remember, it says it is apparent several persons of Sephardic Moorish ancestry are present at this time. Footnote 14, it says, even John Xavier and his brother Valentin were of Moorish descent. The family Xavier, or Javier, right? That's how we say in Spanish, Xavier, having fled to France during the Inquisition. They're Moors who what? Fled to France. If we're talking about Moors, who they are, Moorish, those nations behind that name. If you hear about Sephardic, now that you understand that, where that comes from and all the sub-ethnic groups that might be involved, even in the word Moorish, right? Because a lot of the Berber Moors are pale skin, basically ancient Georgian Iberians, a lot of them coming from Georgia. Remember this idea of Moorish or Moors leaving Spain, Portugal, ending up in France during the Inquisition. And from there, what happened to them after they got to France? What happened to them? One last thing in this book, I just want to read here. It says, one other early families living at Fort Blackmore was Samuel Alley and his daughter Polly, who was captured by Indians but later escaped. When reading through these historical events, I was suddenly struck by the names returned to the listing of Sephardic and Moorish surnames. Again, Sephardic and Moorish together. And discovered that, with the exception of John Carter and Harry Innes, most of the other settlers appeared to be of Sephardic Moorish descent. All right, that's 16. And it says 16, volumes 1-9 of Colonial Families of the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Westminster, Maryland Family Line Publication, says were examined for Sephardic, Moorish, and or Melungeon first names and surnames. Inspection of genealogy suggested that of the following families were of Sephardic Moorish descent. Numbers in parentheses following family names are pasted. So these are the names and last names, all right? I just want you to show the footnote. There's actually a whole study on this. And you can see the list of names, and it goes on. Look how big it is, all right? It says here, list the following families which I found to have predominantly Sephardic, Moorish, Melungeon first names. Addington, Bryson, Borough, all right, keeps going. The Washington County, Virginia, and all these lists. And going back here, it says, indeed, in his History of Scott County, Virginia, 1932, Addington comments that the original spellings of Blackmore and Alley were Blackamore or Blackmore, and Ali or Ali. By 1776, a Samuel Cohen had arrived with his family, and by 1794 they had been joined by James, John, and Peter Van Berber. Vincent Job and Abraham Hobbs, Adam Eli and George Joachim. By 1783, Daniel and Manassas Frio had opened a dry goods store in Abington, Virginia, and by 1784, Joseph Gibbs, Samuel Ware, Ashwell Rollins, Andrew Greer, Valentine Sevier, and Archibald Stone had settled in Jonesboro, Tennessee. In essence, a small Sephardic Moorish Melungeon community had formed in the midst of the Appalachian wilderness. Sephardic Moors, Blackamoor is Blackmore, Blackamoor. All right, just want to correlate it real quick because I found this this book. Just read a little bit. It's called Appalachian Folkways by John B. Reeder. And it says here, who are the Melungeons? Possible origins of the term Melungeon are interesting yet confusing. The French word mélanger means mixed or blended. The Greek melas means dark or black. The African Portuguese melungo or melango means shipmate. Alright, shipmate. The Turkish terms melan and khan, which together sound like melungeon, translate as damned fool. Several colorful theories surround the Melungeon origins, but the most plausible traces Melungeons to the dark-skinned peoples of North Africa and Iberia, Spain, and Portugal, and possibly Turkey. Brent Kennedy, who is a Melungeon and a contemporary expert on the subject, discovered his own genetic connection to the Mediterranean through a rare illness, erythema nodosum sarcoidosis, that he contracted in 1988. Kennedy's ensuing field in documentary research pointed to Mediterranean Moors, Turks, Berbers, and Iberians. If we accept that Melungeons came from the Mediterranean stock, how did they arrive in Appalachia so early before 1700? Kennedy distills his thoughts. I contend that the remnants of Jao Juan Pardo's forts, joined by the Portuguese refugees from Santa Elena, and possibly a few stray Dominicans and Jesuits, exiled Moorish, French Huguenots, again, exiled Moorish, French Huguenots, and escaped Acadians, along with Drakes and perhaps other freed Turkish, Moorish, and Iberian captives survived on these shores. Combined forces over the ensuing years moved to the hinterlands, intermarried with various Carolina and Virginia Native Americans, and eventually became the reclusive Melungeons. I strongly contend that the Turkish Moorish element was, at least in the beginning, the predominant one, explaining why the probable Turkish self-descriptive term Melungeon came to be associated with various populations regardless of their location. All right, so remember that we learned that it's possibly that Abraham Lincoln's mom, who was very dark-skinned, and him himself, who was dark-skinned, right, she might have been Melungeon. We learned that, right? So this book saying, you know, Melungeons are basically these people who basically mix with native people over here, and we already
Bye.